Are we all back? If you're not back, raise your hand. That's what I want to see. Okay, we will begin in a moment. Mom, Dad, I'm home. Mom. Dad. So, did you get all moved out of your apartment? All done. I even got my security deposit back. But you know, it is hard to believe. I could fit everything I own into my car. Well, at least everything worth saving.
So what did you do with your furniture?
Well, you know, I gave a couple of things away, but you know, most of it just went right in the dumpster.
Oh, good. That was the best place for that ratty stuff.
So enough about ratty furniture. How's the job hunt going? Any leads yet? It's pretty rough out there, Dad.
Well, I know, son, but probably not the best time to be coming out of school, but you just have to keep at it.
Well, as it turns out, there is another option.
Another option to getting a job? Now, who could that be?
Well, I'll give you one guess. I'm pretty sure this all takes a talk.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I'll get it. Come on in. Taylor just got here.
I know. I saw him pull in. George just wanted to come over and congratulate the graduate.
Congratulations, Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mark.
Oh, none of this Mr. and Mrs. Mark stuff. You're a college graduate now, so you can call me and Gwen, George and Gwen. But now, you find a job yet? Now you've got yourself all educated?
No job yet.
Well, no wonder, with the way that peanut farmer's been running the country the last 4 years. But now, you just hang in there, Taylor. We'll get Ronald Reagan in there come the end of this year, and he'll get this economy humming.
George, I don't think we should talk politics.
You know, I saw you had your Reagan sign in your yard. And, well, yeah, he's got the nomination all wrapped up. Do you really think a B movie actor could beat Jimmy Carter?
Oh, why, I sure do. He done a darn good job there as governor in California, and he'll beat the socks off of some fella that said the country was covered in mayonnaise.
Oh, George, he didn't say mayonnaise. He said mayonnaise.
Well, it don't make it any better to say it fancy.
Oh, George.
Well, mayonnaise, malaise, or malted milkshake. We got unemployment going through the roof, and inflation eating everybody up.
Well, I will admit that inflation's pretty bad.
Pretty bad. Why, you gotta take a wheelbarrow full of money down to the store just to get a dang loaf of bread.
Well, I guess it's lucky you didn't figure in inflation in those future apples then.
Do what now?
Oh, don't you remember? When I had to pay you for all those apples that me and the other kids stole off the tree, well, Dad figured in those future apples I had to pay for since we broke some of the branches off of your tree.
Oh, now, yep, come to think of it, that does ring a bell.
And there was some discussion on whether or not to include inflation. Mrs. Marks decided we didn't need to figure that in.
Now, if I'd have known how high apples would go, I might have rethought that. Why, they were 63 cents a pound when I looked last.
You know, I remember you saying no one would ever pay 50 cents a pound.
That was before that peanut farmer got into it.
George, I don't think we should talk
travels, I would have started saving, and well, Dad wouldn't have made me get that job washing cars at the dealership.
Now, you worked there all through high school, didn't you?
Yeah, sure did. And Mom made sure a pretty good chunk of my pay went into that savings account every month. So, after, well, a year or so of washing cars and I started working with mechanics, and you know, I guess that's what got me started interested in mechanical engineering. So, you know, I guess stealing those apples is one of the best things I ever did for my future.
Not sure that's a lesson you should get from that.
Well, but now, ain't that just the way of it? No telling how one little thing can lead to all sorts of other things. One day, you're a kid stealing apples, and now you got an education and be able to get yourself a good job. Leastways when Ronald Reagan gets in there.
George, I don't think we should talk politics.
All right. But now, Kate, where are you hoping on working now that you got that college diploma?
George, don't answer the boy. He's very fat and dog.
I know that. It don't mean he can't have some places in mind where he'd like to work. You got anywhere particular you're looking at, Bill?
Well, you know, it is funny you mention that. I was just about to tell the folks before you came in what my plan is.
Well, then just go ahead and tell away.
Well, Mom, Dad, I decided to go to graduate school.
Graduate school? What? You've done graduated from school already.
No, this is the kind of schooling you do after you graduate.
I don't see no point to that. I mean, you got your diploma. Ain't that the point of schooling? You get your diploma, then you get a job.
No, not always. See, I could get a master's degree. I could even get a PhD.
Now, what on earth would a fella want to do a thing like that for?
Taylor. Now, see, your mom and I were able to help you with college and all, but now, how much is this graduate school going to cost? Business at the shop has been, well, it's been slow lately.
Ray, I think we should talk about this later.
No, Dad, you don't understand. They paid me to go to graduate school.
Pay you to go to school? Oh, well now, right there is what's gone wrong with this here dang country. Paying a feller to go to school after he's already got a diploma?
Sonner, are you sure about that?
Yes. See, when you go to graduate school, you work in a research lab and they pay you.
Now, ain't that a job?
No. See, you're still in school and you take classes and all that. But you do research too. And
They pay you to do that.
yes, Dad, not a lot, but enough to live on, and you get to do cutting-edge research at the university.
What sort of research are they doing at this here university?
Well, as turns out, I have an offer to work in a lab that's integrating computers into devices.
Computers? How they gonna get computers into stuff? I saw that computer down at the bank once, and that darn thing, why, it took up half a room.
Oh, well, things have certainly changed. They have microprocessors now. They can go into just about anything. But
What for?
all sorts of things. Like, you know, someday there might be a computer in your coffee maker.
Now, come on. What in tarnation would you need a computer in a darn coffee pot for?
Well, see, you could program the thing so that it would come on in the morning before you got up, so there'd be coffee waiting for you when you woke up.
I got Gwen to do that.
Yes, I know, and I don't think you've been happy with it even once in the 59 years that I've been doing it.
I always drank it, ain't I?
Practically.
Well, now, just how cheery you expect me to be first thing in the morning? Say, Taylor, maybe there's something to that computerized coffee pot. I could get up and have my coffee in peace.
Maybe that computer there can fix your bacon and eggs too, so you won't have to hear you complain about those either.
Anyway, Taylor, how much longer is this going to take?
Oh, well, for a PhD, it could be 5 years or so.
5 years. And after you already went for 4 already? Just to get some dang old talking coffee pot.
Oh, that was just an example.
Well, I don't trust the dang things. No, I don't. Ever since that dang Hal killed all them fellas on that spaceship.
George, that was just a movie.
Well, but that don't mean it couldn't happen. Them dang computers, they could start thinking that they're smarter than us.
Well, if they ever can figure out just exactly how strong you let your coffee, I'd sure be impressed.
Now, George, computers are just machines. They don't think or talk or kill people on spaceships. So your coffee maker is never going to talk to you or kill you in your sleep.
Well,
And what about them little phones they carry around on that Star Trek show? We ever gonna get one of them things?
No, George, that's just science fiction.
And what about robots that could drive our cars for us, huh?
Not that either.
well,
Those are just a bunch of things that people in Hollywood made up for the movies.
Ray, I think Taylor's been trying to say something.
Well, what, Taylor? You want to explain to George how all those things are just made up?
actually, Dad, those are all things that might happen someday. Well, hopefully not the coffee pot killing you in your sleep, but those other things could happen. Someday, computers will probably be able to talk and maybe even think for themselves. And maybe drive your car for you and maybe even let you communicate all over the world with just a handheld device.
Well, sure, maybe 1,000 years or so, but not anytime soon.
Oh, don't be so sure, Dad. It's amazing how fast technology is advancing. That's why I want to get into this field. I think we're headed into a real revolution of technology that could be as big as the Industrial Revolution.
Now, I don't know about all that, but I guess maybe it's not a bad thing to get it on the ground floor.
You know, it sounds pretty sound to me too. But I still don't want no talking coffee. Anyway, congratulations on your graduation. Now, we ought to get home.
Yes, I've got dishes to do, but congratulations, Taylor. We got a card for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Now, I want you to remember, it ain't none of this Mr. and Mrs. March stuff anymore. You got that, Taylor? I am George, and this is Winter. So now, you got yourself a college graduate, and you're going to get one of those, what you call it, pt.2, whatever that is. But now, we'll see you later.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thanks for stopping in.
Take care. Make my coffee.
So what's it say?
Oh, it just says congratulations and they signed it, but it's got $20 in it.
Now, you know the rules. You don't spend a penny of your graduation money to give every single person a thank you letter.
I know, Mom. I'm not a kid anymore.
No, you're an adult who is not going to embarrass his parents by forgetting to write a thank you letter. Because your mother is not going to let you.
All right, Mom. I'll do it.
Good. Now let's sit down and you tell us all about this graduation thing.
Well, let's do that in the den. The Cardinals are about to start their game.
All right, just turn the sound down so we can talk.
Okay, but let's go. The pitch is probably already being thrown out.
took a great class in microprocessor interfacing.
Microprocessor interfacing. Sounds pretty fancy.
Oh, Dad, it is great. We learned how to hook up 8085s to these simple robots to program them to do stuff.
Hey, what's an 8085?
Oh, they're 8-bit microprocessors. They're an improved version of the 8080s.
Okay, enough technical talk. Now, you can talk to your father about all that sort of stuff later.
No, hang on just a second. So you're programming robots? Do we need to start worrying about killer robots running amok?
They're just simple arms that can pick up things and put them down somewhere else. So I think we're safe for now.
So we don't have to worry about our coffee maker killing us in the middle of the night.
Not yet.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, enough computer talk. So, have you met anyone?
Met anyone?
She means girls.
Yeah, Dad. I figured that.
Well, so have you?
No, Mom, not yet.
But you broke up with Cheryl over 4 months ago.
I know, Mom. I've just been really busy with studying and teaching.
What has to do with field of the children?
Mom, there are women in computers. You know, almost a third of the class ITA is female.
So why don't you ask one of them out?
Mom, they're my students.
Well, they're college students, and they're all adults.
That doesn't matter. They're my students. I can't ask out my students.
I don't see why not.
Well, to start with, because it would be wrong. And secondly, I'd be thrown out of school.
No, I just don't want you to be alone.
Mom, I'm not lonely.
Taylor, what your mother's saying translates to, she wants to have the pitter patter of little feet around someday, and she doesn't want them to be little computerized robot feet.
Well, I don't like that middle image of that conjure now.
Okay, so how about we change the subject?
That sounds good to me. So, how are things around here?
Oh, not too bad.
Has
Not
business,
good.
has business picked up at the shop yet?
Not yet. I was hoping George would be right. Reagan getting elected would fix all the problems with the economy, but I sure haven't seen it.
Speaking of George, who is that out in his garden with him?
That's Edna.
Well, who's Edna?
You know, your father told you all about that whole thing about Edna.
No, he didn't. I've never heard anything about Edna, so, well, who is she?
Didn't you tell Taylor about Edna and one of your calls?
No, I thought you did. You always cover the local gossip.
I do not. And that is the gossip. It really happened.
What really happened?
The whole thing with Edna.
Yes, what is the whole thing with Edna?
I'm sure your father told you about it.
Well, he didn't.
Now, I can't believe your mother didn't tell you about it.
Okay, now look. Nobody told me about Edna. So who is Edna?
Well, it all started last August. Georgie went to one of Wynn's class reunions. Now let's see, what year would that be?
Her 60th.
16, are you sure?
Yes.
It doesn't matter. So what happened?
Oh, that's right. It was her 60th. She graduated in 1920.
Yes, just like I said.
Okay, so what happened?
I'm getting to that. So, they went to the reunion, and Edna was there. She was in Wynn's graduating class. And then a month after the reunion, George told Wynn he wanted her to move out, and he was going to move Edna in.
He did what?
He left Wynn for Edna.
I don't think you could really say he left her, since he stayed there and made her move out.
Well, I can't believe it.
Oh, it happened. I can't believe your father never told you.
Mom, I promise I would not have forgotten if Dad had told me that. So why? Why would George do that?
Well, apparently George had dated Edna when she was a freshman, and he was a senior in high school. And I guess he had always been sort of secretly carrying a torch for her.
Well, so what happened to Gwen?
Well, she moved to a real nice retirement place up in Jefferson City. Her grandkids, I think even a couple of my great-grandkids live up there. I stopped in and had a visit with her. It must have been a lot of the early spring, March, I think.
So, I can't believe it. She just agreed to move out when George told her to.
Well, it wouldn't be much of a prospect staying
pretty good for the both of them.
Well, that's beside the point. She had to go through the humiliation of everybody knowing that George was throwing her over for that other woman.
You know, that's kind of ironic when you think about it. All those years of her watching everybody else's business out that kitchen window of hers, and the biggest scandal in the neighborhood ended up involving her. So Dad, don't you talk to George anymore?
He certainly doesn't. But George is, what's the name for it? A piranha in the neighborhood.
I think it's pariah.
Oh, that's right, it's a piranha.
Although, I guess piranha's really not a bad name for George either. Well, I'm going to go over and say hi to him and meet Edna.
You can't. Nobody talks to George.
Mom, I have known George all my life. I'm not saying what he did when was right or anything like that, but I think that's between the two of them. I'm not going to shun him for the rest of his life over it.
But you can't. What if the neighbors see you going over there?
What do they do? He's not a criminal or a mass murderer. He just got divorced. And besides, the only one that watched who was doing what in this neighborhood was Gwen. She's in Jefferson City now.
Taylor.
June, let the boy go. He's right. We don't have to associate with George. There's his choice if he wants to.
Thanks, Dad. Now, look. I'll just be gone a minute. I'm just going to go over and say right now.
Well, there he goes.
Well, don't make it sound like he's going off to war.
Well, just look at George with that big grin on his face.
Well, you can't blame him for that. He's happy to see Taylor. Happy to see anybody would be my guess. Can't blame him for that either.
Well, now whose side are you on?
No, I'm just saying, I can understand him being happy to finally have someone come over and say hi to him and Edna.
Well, it's his own doing.
Now, I got that. Again, I'm not sympathizing with him. I'm just making an observation.
Oh, they're looking this way, Doug. Do you think they saw us?
Well, I don't know. Does it matter?
I don't want them to think we're looking over there. Do you think they're still looking this way?
Now, how would I know that?
Well, check.
You check.
All right.
Are they looking this way?
I don't know. I didn't have time to see.
Oh, for the love of... I'll look. All clear. They're just talking to Taylor.
Oh, Doug.
Okay, that's enough for me. You can keep watching if you want. I'm going in to see what's on TV until Taylor gets back.
Well, I guess I need to start dinner anyway.
Mom, Dad, I'm home. Mom.
Here you are. How was the drive?
Oh, it was fine. And no, I wasn't speeding. I just left a bit earlier than I was planning on. So where's Dad?
Oh, he's in the bathroom, I think. He'll be out in a second. Has the Senate said yet that you're a doctor now?
I don't really feel like a doctor. I just have a PhD.
Well, they call that a doctorate. And I've been telling everyone that you're a doctor. So you better get used to it.
Then I just hope no one has a medical emergency while I'm home.
What's all this talk about a medical emergency?
Oh, Mom said she's been telling everybody I'm a doctor now. So I was saying I just hope nobody has a medical emergency while I'm home and expects me to help them.
Well, now, I suppose you could interface them up with one of your microprocessors and turn them into one of those, what are they called?
Cyborgs.
That's it, cyborg.
Okay, enough of that. So how's Amy?
She's fine, Mom.
Too bad she couldn't come with you this time.
I know, Mom, but you know, she just couldn't get away from work for a whole week.
I don't see why she has to work right up until the time you move.
Well, Mom, one, she has a lot of loose ends to get tied up and her replacement to train, and two, we need the money.
Oh, why are you worried about the money? You'll be fine when you start your See, you had had all that time, almost a whole month. Could have had a wedding.
Mom, we've been through this. There was no way I could write my dissertation and plan a wedding at the same time.
Oh, Taylor, men don't plan weddings. Men show up to weddings. The only thing your father knew about a wedding was what time to be there.
Well, Mom, times have changed.
No.
No, maybe they haven't. But remember, Mom, I couldn't be sure exactly when I'd get my dissertation finished, and I had a hard deadline on when my job started. So there was just no way we could cram a wedding in there, but I promise, we are going to get married eventually.
Taylor, no woman has a wedding date of eventually.
Mom, Amy is fine with it.
Well, that may be what she says, but I bet that's not what she thinks.
June, leave the boy alone. They'll be all right.
I just don't want him, I don't want to let this one get away. He's finally found a good one.
Mom, she's not going to get away. We're moving together, and she had to change jobs to do it.
Exactly. See, she's making a big commitment, and the least you could do is to give her a firm date to show your commitment.
Dad, help.
Taylor, son, just try to keep in mind, you're just worrying about a possible wife. Your mother can almost hear the sound of grandchildren in the future.
I just want him to be happy.
I know, Mom, and I promise. As soon as we get settled, we will set a date.
There you go. Grandchildren saved. Now let's move on.
Speaking of kids, I saw the kids in the yard in Marx's house when I pulled in. It's strange to see a new young family living there.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. When you were a kid, this whole neighborhood was filled with kids. But it seems like they've pretty much all grown up, and it's mostly couples like your mother and me now. So it's nice to see a young family move back in here so we can hear the sounds of the kids playing again.
I guess you're right. Now that you mention it, it seems like I haven't seen many kids in the neighborhood on my visits home, well, in quite some time now.
It's a lot more obvious when you hear it all the time. I can't remember the last time I saw boys riding down the hill on their bikes. But maybe as some of the older folks move on or die out, there'll be young families moving in, like with the Marks.
Yeah, so Dad, what do you think actually happened with George and Edna?
There's no way to ever really know for sure. Of course, George was losing his eyesight, and he couldn't drive anymore.
Yeah, the last time I was home, I guess at Christmas, he was having trouble getting around. I think he'd already quit driving by then.
Thank goodness for that. I can still remember him coming down the street with his face, going half the speed limit with his face pressed up against the windshield so he could see out. Well, he was a real danger.
No, anyway, so he didn't drive anymore. So Edna was driving out in the country south of town. Now, I don't remember where they were going, but it doesn't matter. She just ran off the road and hit a tree. Of course, it killed her right off, and George was so banged up he couldn't remember what had happened. So who knows? Could have been a deer in the road, or could have fallen asleep, or looked down for a second, or who knows what. Maybe just too old to drive. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Then George died 5 days later.
So I guess it was just hurt too bad for them to save him?
Well, yeah, he was pretty banged up. I mean, broken ribs, a broken hip, a broken leg, and probably some internal injuries.
That sounds bad, but I would have thought they could have fixed all that.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe, but he was pretty banged up.
But I mean, didn't they try?
Well, yeah, I mean, he went to the hospital and all.
So did they do surgeries?
Well, yeah. I mean, no, not exactly.
All right, I think you can just go ahead and tell him. It's all over now.
Well, tell me what?
Well, see, they could have done a bunch of surgeries and all, and they were all ready to rush George up to Columbia and all, but George said he didn't want to go.
Didn't want to go? Why?
Well, look, son, George was 86, mostly blind, with a broken hip. Most likely he was never going to walk again. Edna was dead, and all his kids had disowned him. So let's say they do all those surgeries, and what then? He couldn't sit over at his house alone. So best case, he sits mostly blind in a nursing home the rest of his life.
So I don't understand. So they didn't send him to Columbia?
Well, they were sure going to, regardless of what George said. They said he wasn't able to make that decision himself on account of being so badly injured. Now, George, he was fixing on coming out of that hospital bed to show he wasn't getting in the ambulance.
Well, so what? He was planning on just walking out of the hospital on a broken hip?
Walk nothing. George was planning on whooping everybody in that hospital. That George was an ornery old word.
Yeah, yes, he was. Well, what did they do then?
Now, thing is, the cops had come around, you know, trying to figure out who they should notify about the wreck and all. Well, of course, there was no one home over at George's house, so I ended up talking to them and had to tell them George's family had all disowned him and all. So the long and short of it was, I ended up going down to the hospital to see about George. Well, I got there about the time the whole thing was blowing up about whether or not he was going off to Columbia. So I ended up talking to George, trying to talk him into going to get fixed up.
Well, so what? You couldn't convince him?
I don't know anyone in that hospital or on this planet that could convince George of anything once his mind was made up. Anyway, I talked to him long enough to know that George was just as rational as he ever was, even if he was in a lot of pain and mad as a wet hen. He sure was a tough word. Anyway, I told the doctors that he was in his right mind.
Oh, so then they agreed not to send him to Columbia?
No, they sure didn't. They said they needed to do everything they could to save his life.
Well, so I don't get it. What happened?
Well, I explained to the doctors in a little more calm manner than George had just what his situation was. And I finished up with the fact that George had fought for his country in World War I. He was 86 years old, and that if he didn't want to have any surgeries, well, I didn't think there was a person in the country that had the right to force him to.
I didn't know George fought in World War I.
And it wasn't something he liked to talk about. I think he saw an awful lot of death when he was at the front.
So then they agreed not to send him to Columbia?
Yeah, they did. They put him in a hospital room and made him as comfortable as possible and gave him 3 meals a day, which he refused to eat. And well, 5 days later, he joined Ed and they were buried together.
And your father went in and visited George every day until he passed.
Dad, I thought you weren't even speaking to George.
Well, now, it wasn't like we were close friends or anything, particularly since the whole thing with Edna and Gwen. But he was still our neighbor after all, and it wasn't like he killed somebody.
Funny, I think that's just about what I said when I heard George and Gwen had gotten divorced. Back when you all were in full shun mode.
Well, I still wasn't speaking to him. But frankly, I never liked George much anyway.
So, how about Gwen? She's still up in Jefferson City?
As far as I know, she's still doing fine. It's been, I don't know, maybe 2 years since I visited with her. She was doing fine then.
So, what was it like sitting with George? Could he talk?
Oh, he sure could. It hurt on account of the broke ribs, but like I said, George was a tough old bird.
Yeah. So, what did you all talk about?
Oh, all sorts of things. Of course, he was mighty happy that he'd lived long enough to see Reagan reelected and the economy turn around, just like he always said it would under Reagan. He even talked about how it was a shame he wouldn't live long enough to see Reagan reelected again. He said if Roosevelt could do it, then Reagan sure ought to be able to. I remember him saying the same thing about Nixon.
Yep. Funny, I remember how upset George was when Gwen admitted she voted for Roosevelt 4 times.
Oh, I remember that. After all those years of marriage, Gwen still had one surprise left for George, and he was just dumbfounded by it.
I remember the look on George's face when he said, "You voted for that socialist so-and-so?" Anyway, George also asked about you. I told him you were doing fine. He asked if you'd made a killer coffee pot yet.
Oh, what'd you tell him?
Well, I said not yet, but you were working on it. But I guess the most interesting thing he talks about was that I finally got to hear the story about Edna.
Really? So what was it?
Okay, so George dated Edna when he was a senior and she was a freshman in high school. He was just crazy about her, and I guess she was crazy about him too.
Hard to believe someone being crazy about George.
I guess she was. Anyway, George graduated and went off to war in Europe in 1917. You know, Edna was supposed to wait he got back after something like 2 years, she fallen for some other guy.
So I guess George must have met Gwen on the rebound.
Well, he didn't put it quite that way, but I guess that's about the long and short of it. Anyway, George never got over it. Then when he saw her at the reunion, Edna apologized and said she had made a big mistake. I guess her parents had had a pretty big hand in all of it. Apparently, they hadn't been real big on America getting into the war, and so they weren't too impressed with George going off to fight. They pushed Edna to break things off with George.
Huh, so still hard to believe though. Somebody 14 waiting on a soldier to come back from war.
Or maybe 15. But remember, times were different then.
Well, anyway, she was engaged to someone else when George got back. Apparently to some guy her parents approved of from some rich family. Funny thing is, I guess the guy lost everything in the crash of 29, so that part didn't really work out anyway. So the guy was dead by the time of the reunion anyway, and well, after she apologized to George, they just really hit it back off, and well, like they say, the rest is history.
Wow, that is quite a story.
Doesn't excuse what he did to Gwen, though.
No, Mom, but you know, it does sort of explain it.
And he lost all of his family and all of his friends.
Well, George didn't have that many friends anyway, and the kids didn't come to see him all that often.
You're not saying that he was justifying what he did, are you?
No, I'm just saying that for George, maybe it wasn't that bad of a bargain. And, you know, they did look pretty happy together for the last, what was it, like 4.5 years?
You know, that makes me think of an old song by The Who. I'd pay any price just to win you, surrender my good life for bad.
No, that's what I'm saying. Though George's life wasn't all that great before.
Still doesn't make it right.
Well, no, Mom, it doesn't. But you said yourself, Gwen was happier too after she moved up to Jefferson City. So, you know, it really did work out for everyone. But that reminds me, did George's kids come see him in the hospital?
No. They never forgave him. Didn't come to the funeral either.
Oh, that's too bad.
I feel sorry for them.
Don't you mean for George?
Oh, no, I'm pretty sure George made his peace with his decision. Besides, he died, and any regrets he might have had died with him. His earthly worries were over. But his kids might regret not making peace with their father one day, and that regret will last the rest of their lives with no way to correct it.
Yeah, I guess you might be right. So I guess George's funeral must have been a pretty small affair.
Oh, not so bad. Of course, it was along with Edna. So all her family was there too. And we were there, and Tuttle and Jerry, and Aaron Riley.
Really? So the whole cavalry that went over when George broke out that guy's window was there?
Yeah. In fact, I got up and told that story to service. The tale of George and the Beanpole.
You did?
I did. And your mother got up and told the story of you and the apple tree and how it, and of course George, affected your life.
You did, Mom? I thought you never forgave George for how he left Gwen.
Well, I didn't. But one, it was still a great story. And all in all, George really wasn't a bad guy, even if I didn't like what he did to Gwen. I guess it's like something you said years ago.
Well, what's that?
Well, you said that the day that George broke out that windshield, you said nobody's good all the time.
Really? I don't remember saying that.
Well, you did, although as I remember, you were talking about professional wrestling.
Oh! Well, that makes sense then. I think I got most of my important life lessons from pro wrestling. Hey, look at that.
What?
See, over the fence over there in George's backyard, those kids had climbed up in the old apple tree. They're probably going after green apples. Well, folks, that's our little play. Story as June. My lovely wife and mother. And Bob Robinson as my dad, Ray. And my feisty neighbors, Sharon Paris as Gwen. And Dean Smith as George.
And you voted for Roosevelt!
And our stage technician, Sandy Smith.
And our playwright, our actor, our director, and perhaps the most important thing of all, our scrubber of the toilets. Right there.